Hello and welcome to Podtoid. I'm CJ.
I'm Chris.
I'm Dan.
I'm Charlotte.
I'm Occams.
And this is episode 454. Thank you for joining us today. We have a good show prepared for you. We're going to be talking about some Fall Guys, which has just been the biggest game online for the past week. We have some news on a whole lot of Street Fighter, and a little bit later we'll be looking at the recently announced Suicide Squad game. But first, how are we doing today?
It's too hot.
It's too hot.
It's too hot. Do you know what the temperature is here?
No, because I don't know how Celsius works.
Mate, it's 33,000 Celsius.
I don't know how hot that is, but as I just got done with a week that had 4 days that reached 105 degrees, I'm just going to assume it's hot.
Yeah. You know what?
Miserable.
CJ has it hotter. 105 is like near 40-ish, like around that ballpark for context.
I don't think this is I don't treat this as a competition because we're
I
all in misery.
Misery competition.
I tried to pour my Cocoa Pops. Other cereals are available this morning, and they'd just formed a bar in the box.
Hell yeah.
I can't buy a candy bar at the store without it being melted by the time I get it home.
This is becoming like the Four Yorkshiremen sketch. Like, back in my day, it was so hot, I melted into a puddle. Yeah. It's pretty hot here, but it's gonna, I think it's about the same as England, but it's gonna stay that hot for another week, which is great when you're trying to move shit. Like, I'm moving and I'm bringing a big suitcase backwards and forwards between my old home and my new home every weekend, so that's fun.
Moving is never fun, but moving in the heat, that sounds like hell.
Yeah, it's not fun.
In college, one time we moved at like 2 a.m. to avoid the heat.
Oh my god.
Well, then it just looks like you're robbing a place.
Well, hey, I'll take that over just back sweat when you walk outside.
I'll tell you how I know how hot it is. One of the main newspapers here, which I'm not going to fucking dignify with a shout out, put out a video on Twitter that was, look, we put this ice cream outside and it melted. because that's the fucking bar for news now.
I mean, if it's anything, like last winter, our news was doing the opposite in like January, where they would take like boiling water and throw it into the air, and then it turns into like mist because it's too cold. So it's like the equivalent of that, really.
That is the news equivalent of I mean, that's a slow news day right there. If that's what you're doing, that's just a weatherman showing off his knowledge.
Yeah, because I mean, like, if there's like nothing going on in the world right now at all, that we've got so much space to put up a 4-minute video of an ice cream melting.
Well, I mean, who doesn't know that ice cream melts? So it seems like it's a pretty good public service announcement to me.
It doesn't last long enough. It doesn't last long enough. I just devour that fucking shit. It's like you buy like 3 pints, and it's like, we've made this carton in a special way so that you can reseal the lid. Yeah, okay.
So these are Saturday nights for Chris boys.
Yeah, the fucking lid's going back on that, I'm sure.
They need to find a way to make the carton edible. Like now with like waffle carton. Like that's the kind of ice cream I'd buy.
I would 100% buy that because I'm already eating the entire Ben and Jerry's in one sitting. I will put on a movie, and by the time that movie is over, that ice cream will be well gone.
And I found out that like tears are the sweetest marinade.
This is a really good mental image.
So CJ, you bought some Lego.
That was my day yesterday. That was 7.5 hours to put together the Lego NES with the TV. Another 30 minutes to take it apart to figure out what I did wrong. So that's always fun. And it was light when I started it, and it was 10 o'clock at night when I finished. So my thumbs are in pain. I don't know when I'll be able to pick up a controller and actually do something with it because there are 2 blisters on my thumbs right now for spending 7 hours sticking together 2,600 different Lego pieces to build this freaking NES. The one thing I've seen people say online is that the NES is kind of an uninteresting design, that it's kind of too boxy to be that interesting. But when you're putting it together, it's honestly a marvelous feat of Lego engineering. Just all of the work and the different aspects that go into recreating, that 1985 NES console with like. It's not a vent. It's whatever those little divots were that were on the top of the NES. I don't know why they were there, but seeing how that is built is interesting. You could put in the NES cartridge and push it down, and it holds it down just like your NES would. And then the moving screen is just fucking amazing. Boring as hell to build. But once it's complete, it's like, oh my God, this is so cool. And of course, that's the part I did wrong, so I had to take it apart and put it back together again just to get the gears moving correctly. But it was a bit. I was going between buying the NES Lego set or the I can't remember what it's even called now, but it's that analog.
The analog
pre-sold
pocket.
it. Thank you, Analog Pocket. They just pre-sold it right around the same time that the NES Lego went up for sale, and so I'm like, I want the NES Lego because I only have like 2 Game Boy games here, and I should probably just get rid of them anyways.
Did you blow on the pieces before you put them together to make sure they worked?
Yes, I did, and on one part of it fell apart because as stable as it looks, there's a lot of pieces on this Lego set that are held together by one little. What are those called? Pits? The little pegs that are on pits, yeah. That are like, there are pieces on there that are held together by 1 or 2 pits. So I don't want to blow on it because I'm afraid of breaking it. And even when I rotate the screen now, it will get stuck, and so I'll have to like touch the screen actually to move it to get it start rotating again. So very, very worthwhile, very fun. 7.5 hours putting that together, and I'm just glad it works because I did the Lego Steamboat Willie set from the old Mickey Mouse cartoon, and when I roll it forward, only one of the steam stacks pops up and down. So that's a little disappointing. So I'm glad everything works here.
And then best of all, you got through that entire description without saying Legos.
Yeah, well. I'm a stickler on that, so if I catch myself doing that, it's just like just slap myself.
Okay.
So
you're a stickler for being correct then.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
That's why I say champing at the bit and not chomping at the bit, because I'm that dick. Before we get into the show today, I just wanted to. Well, we're well into the show now, but I just want to start us off with this story. I don't know how it is where you guys live. But around me, we have a lot of wildlife in my town and surrounding area. You can drive a few hours in any direction, and you're bound to see like deer, elk, burros, turkeys, skunks, fox, antelope, tortoises, ducks. We actually have a duck crossing near my apartment. It's always adorable to see traffic come to a complete stop so a family of ducks can cross the street from one pond to the other. But we also have bears. And this week, the National Park Service posted a list of things you shouldn't do if you come across a bear. The Park Service says that you should remain calm and then move away slowly, always keeping an eye on the bear. But as for some of the things you shouldn't do, the Park Service says that you shouldn't climb a tree because bears are much better at climbing a tree than you are. You shouldn't run because bears may give chase and chances are they're faster than you are. And finally, the Park Service says you shouldn't push down a slower friend, sacrificing to the bear while the rest of you make your escape.
That may be, but, rules are made to be broken.
The Park Service says that even if your friendship has run its course, you shouldn't push them down so the bear can go all revenant on their ass. However, the park doesn't say that you shouldn't keep inviting your slower moving friends along on hikes to be the fall guy just in case a bear does start following you. So they're just asking that you don't push them down from now on.
What is their stance on bringing along picnic baskets? Is that a good distraction tactic, or is it attracting the bears too much? A picnic's allowed.
No mention of a picnic basket, but I assume that's okay so long as you're not going to Jellystone Park.
You are listening to Podtoid.
Let's go ahead and get to talking about games. And Charlotte, I want to start with you because you've been playing Fall Guys, which is a game that too many people have been trying to play, from what I understand.
Yeah, we had no problems with the server. We played it at about midnight. Yes, so early morning today, midnight, and I'm not sure whether that was just happened to be a low time for the servers, but it's like that would have been middle of the afternoon in the US. So I'm not quite sure why it was fine for us. I don't know if they're like Europe servers and US servers, and maybe because if we're on a Europe server, then middle of the night might not have been a bad time to go on, but we had no problems. But we only played for half an hour because the thing with Fall Guys is it's very fun when you start, like the idea that you're playing against 60 strangers online and you're doing this sort of like Takeshi's Castle sort of, very physical sort of game show type of game. And, keep falling down. And if you're in a group and you're watching somebody play, it's very funny just to laugh at them as they deck it over and over again. And then you do start getting better and you do start getting to like the second or the third round, and it's great. And we didn't notice that much problems with lag. I mean, the internet here is fairly average, I'd say, and no problems with that sort of issue. The problem with Fall Guys is it gets very repetitive very fast because whichever room you get dropped into, there are certain stages which only make sense with loads of people and only make sense with less people when it's been narrowed down a bit. So you're going to start after a very short while seeing the same stages over and over again. And some of them are really good and you would want to play them over and over again. Some of them you don't want to play over and over again. For example, we didn't like the seesaw stage because it's like it acts like a proper seesaw in that if somebody stood on the one side, too many people are stood on one side, then you just can't cross sometimes. You're just completely blocked, and that gets quite frustrating if like people are acting against you to the point where you can't even move forwards. That gets kind of annoying. So I think it's a good game, but I think it's for a certain type of player, it will be very, very addictive and very, very fun. But for some people, it just won't do that. They'll play it a few times and then they'll have had enough of it. And part of the issue is the unlocking stuff. Like you can unlock new costumes and new patterns, like for your colors of your costume as you play. It's not entirely. I don't know if it does have like real world currency microtransaction stuff, but you can start unlocking stuff with in-game currency, but that takes a while, and for some of them you have to actually win and be the victor out of up to 60 players, and a lot of it's very random, like you can just be unlucky and get eliminated pretty fast. So I feel like you'd have to be pretty hardcore into it to start unlocking stuff, really. And there was a lot of people wearing really cool costumes, which implied that they'd been playing it for a really long time and unlocked stuff. But for me, it's fun, but it sort of was extremely fun for the first couple of goes. And then it fast started to, not offer anything more to me, really.
Now, were you playing duo or solo?
We were playing solo. We didn't investigate. You mean whether we played it with 2-player local?
Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't investigate that because I've left my controller at home, actually, so we couldn't have done that anyway. But do you think that would be better?
No, actually, I've heard that that's worse. I've heard that it's far more boring when you're doing the co-op than it is with single player. What were there any of the games in Fall Guys that you really enjoyed?
Anything that was just like a long stage where you run from one end to the other was very fun, except for the seesaw one. Football was one where my boyfriend got through to that, and you can spectate. If you get knocked out, you can spectate everybody else completing and see who wins. And we watched a round of it as well. And the round we watched was like really tense, like there was goals being scored backwards and forwards all over the place. But the one that my boyfriend was in, there was like one goal the entire time. And it was kind of frustrating because like he felt like it was really hard to score, and like it was hard to influence anything because there was just too many people running around on the screen. And I think he thought it might have been better if that was a stage that was like really towards the end rather than a middle stage, if you know what I mean. Yeah. So there were some stages that looked good when you saw them, but when you actually tried them out, they weren't as good as you thought they would be. Yeah.
What about the tail grabbing? Because I know that's kind of a divisive one as well.
We haven't actually. I don't think we did that one actually. I don't think we drew that one, which is it actually goes against my argument that it gets quite repetitive. But then again, it can be that you can probably draw the seesaw one, for example, 5 times in a row, like at the same point of the challenge, and it's just bad luck that you keep pulling that one. So yeah, I think we should give it another go. But my impression is that it's not one that you're going to be playing for hours and hours and hours. You probably just dip into it now and then for a fun time, you know.
Yeah. Now, Dan, you downloaded this, but you haven't been able to connect yet?
Yeah, I tried playing 3 times over the past couple of days, but the servers were down for me. It's been very popular to the point where the poor community manager dude on Twitter is just getting a ton of angry responses, and that's been very interesting to watch on my Twitter timeline.
They seem to be taking it in stride, though.
Oh yeah, definitely. That guy
it's a free game.
I don't think it's free on PC.
Okay,
yeah, it's like $20 on PC, and they struck some sort of deal with PlayStation to make it a PS Plus thing. So
exactly that's what I meant. It's technically sort of free on PS for PlayStation in the sense that if you have PS Plus, you just download it. So people who are playing it on PlayStation and complaining, shut up. It's free.
I will say, that's what Rocket League did, because you remember that was free on PlayStation Plus for the first month as well, and that worked out very well for Rocket League. So I think that's maybe why Fall Guys went that route as well. Charlotte, you've also been playing Erica?
Yep, that was PS Plus last month. We wanted to play this because me and my partner also like to play FMV games and just pass the controller and like as an alternative to watching a film in an evening. And I'm afraid to say like Erica was one that we'd wanted to buy before, but the file size put us off because it's a 40 gigabyte game, and we were like,
Jesus.
Yeah, this is going to take hours to download. We can't be bothered. We'll get something that's smaller because that's just insane. But we did decide to download it within plenty of time to play it last night. And so with FMV games, there are games that I've played which are good and have like a good story and would stand up to a film sort of experience. For example, Telling Lies would fall into that category. There are games that are really hokey and the plot's terrible, but for some reason I find them really charming, like Late Shift. I really like Late Shift, even though it's kind of a bad game. Mm-hmm. Erica's neither of those things. It's just not very good in my opinion. Like, I get why people like it, but it's very much about the supernatural from the start. It's about a girl who you sort of find out at the beginning there's something weird and supernatural going on with her family, and her dad was murdered, and then similar crimes start popping up and you have to go back to the original scene of the crime. And it's the thing is, you never get to know Erica really as like a person. She's just this weird sort of wide-eyed sort of supernatural girl, and there's not much more to her. And then there's like it takes part in a sort of a hospital where people with reported to have mental illnesses live in this place, and it's all very sort of stereotypical, and you just don't like. None of the characters are very well developed. It's very sort of cliched, and and it's not charming about it. It's just very. I think also what doesn't help is that it encourages you to download an app to play it instead of using the trackpad on the PlayStation controller. It says that you'll have a better experience if you download the app and then use the touch screen on your phone to control it, which feels really. I get why some of the movements I can't see working very well on the trackpad because of the size of the trackpad, but it's just not necessarily. It didn't add anything to the experience for me, really. I get why people liked it. I get why it's got some good reviews, but I think there are better examples in the genre, and I wish that they'd done something more to like develop the characters on one playthrough, because it's all well and good saying right at the beginning, no one playthrough holds all the answers. But if you don't make the first playthrough attractive, nobody's going to sit through another playthrough. Like, you have to make it people want to replay it, and they didn't really do anything to make me want to replay it, to be honest. Like sometimes you want to play a cheesy FMV game where the acting's pretty bad. Think of things like Night Trap. Like people love that stuff. I would much rather play something like that than something that's completely charmless and cliched and doesn't really do anything to make me interested in the characters.
This is Podtoid.
That is it for games, which means it is time for the news.
This is the news.
And there was a surprising amount of news this week, given that it was the first full week of August, and this is usually a slow period. A lot of video game companies announced massive profits during the COVID-19 pandemic, with almost all companies seeing a huge rise in digital sales. Animal Crossing New Horizons was the big winner, as Nintendo revealed it has sold more than 22 million copies since March, meaning it has outsold the GameCube, the console that first introduced the franchise to Western audiences. Square Enix announced that Final Fantasy VII Remake sold 5 million copies, and I gotta say, I thought that would be higher. Occams, don't you think that should be higher?
It seems like it would be. That's still a solid number. I was more surprised to hear how few copies or how few GameCube sold, but that was such a big console for me and my friends when we were in college that maybe to me it's ubiquitous, but I guess in the grand scheme it wasn't.
It was hurt a bit by not having a DVD player built in. I seem to remember that caused it to sell a bit fewer than its competitors.
Definitely.
But Charlotte, counterpoint, it had a handle.
You could carry it to your friend's house because we all did that.
Did you guys ever see that? Was it Panasonic made one that looked more like kind of like a hi-fi? It was like silver and very it had like a little bass boost function. I don't know, something.
Oh, I do think I remember seeing something like that.
Yeah, I think there was one or two versions that were like sort of like third parties built consoles that were combined GameCube and DVD. But I think by that time the ship had sailed a bit. Like everybody had a DVD player by that point, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the PlayStation 2 came in as, in America, it was the cheapest DVD player you could buy.
Yeah, as someone who loved my orange spiced GameCube, the PS2 kind of just like laid waste to that entire generation, pretty much.
Yeah. The big story of this week has to do with Street Fighter, as Capcom announced that more fighters are coming in the 5th season of DLC for the game. Announced fighters in the live stream this week include Dan Hibiki, Rose, Oro, Akira from Capcom's defunct Rival Schools franchise, and another fighter who is going to be revealed at a later date. Season 5 was just announced back in May, and watching the live stream with this week, it was pretty clear that this season seemed to be thrown together at the last minute. I've seen rumors that development of Street Fighter 6 wasn't going so well, and that might have to do with the other news surrounding the series. On Sunday, it was revealed that Yoshinori Ono announced he's leaving Capcom. You may not like what Ono has done with Street Fighter 5, and Capcom may not like what he was doing with 6, but I don't know where the fighting game scene would be without his work on Street Fighter 4, right, Chris?
Yeah, definitely. I'm not a huge fan of all of like Ono's decisions in like where he's taken the franchise, or like kind of you don't always know who has their fingers in the pies for marketing and stuff like that. In terms of the production of the series, like I'm not a huge fan of Street Fighter 5. I put a lot of time into it, almost out of habit. But regardless of anything that he may have done that I've disagreed with, like he basically brought Street Fighter back. Like Street Fighter 4 happened because he wouldn't let them not let it happen. They were all well and good to never make a Street Fighter game again. Capcom were. And he was like, he mobilized the community and he did this like kind of grassroots campaign. And we got Street Fighter 4 in 2008, and that single-handedly like rejuvenated like the fighting game community on the mainstream. There were still like OGs, as they call them, who were playing games from Third Strike and Alpha as there are today. But like the fact that there's a term in the FGC of 08er, which represents somebody who came in that wave of games that's like, you know, the return of Guilty Gear and the return of BlazBlue and Street Fighter 4 and the Mortal Kombat reboot and stuff like that. That's all because Street Fighter 4 came out and was a fucking massive success, an enormous fucking success. when Capcom had been telling him, we're not going to make another Street Fighter game because no one gives a shit about it anymore.
Yeah, instead they made a whole bunch of crossover games that no one even remembers.
And it's weird. You've hit a lot of news there. It's been a really big week for the franchise, and there's kind of some rough and some smooth. Like, I think it's great that there's some more characters coming to 5. There's this weird thing about Street Fighter 5 Champion Edition. You're gonna have to bear with me here, but like, you can buy that game today and get like 40 characters with loads of costumes, a shit ton of stages, arcade modes, trials, challenges, online stuff, all of that, and for a really good price. And it's great. That's a great package. It's taken 3 years to make it a great package.
Yeah.
Right before they're thinking of announcing a new game, we're in a place where we can be like, Street Fighter 5's where it needs to be. It's just like, and that's kind of the bittersweetness of it.
Yeah, and when it was first announced that there would be, and obviously this didn't come to be true, there'd be one Street Fighter SKU for the entire console generation, and they would just keep adding characters. I honestly, like that to me is the best way to do fighting games, because I don't want to have to buy Street Fighter 4 and then Super Street Fighter 4 and then Super Street Fighter 4 Ultra that adds 2 more characters. I would much rather just have the single game at the beginning of the console generation or whenever it launches, and just keep playing that one with all the new stuff added to it. The problem is that they just had such little content there at the beginning. They didn't even have a single player mode for like 6 or 7 months after that game released.
It's been weird, and because time moves so quickly and franchises change so much, and so much has come out since then. Like, we've had like 3 Mortal Kombat games since Street Fighter 4 to the end of Street Fighter 5. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's easy to forget when Street Fighter 5 launched, all the controversy, and like there was rootkits in it, and people were getting in trouble, and people were getting in trouble for adding their own costumes. They were getting like their accounts, and then there was all of the fight money stuff, all of the, you'll be able to buy everything with in-game money, and then within less than a year that wasn't the case. Do you know what I mean? That was like, apart from this stuff, and apart from this stuff, and apart from this stuff. On our very first show that we all did as when Podtoid came back, was when they just launched that advertising thing, where it was like, your characters can wear adverts for brands, and for that we'll give you fucking tuppence or something. I don't know. It was like, we'll give you 0.3% of the money for every fight that you need to buy a new character. And there was just so much stuff that came along with Street Fighter 5 that was just really ugly, really ugly marketing. And I got no problem with saying, in terms of like the mainline games, it's the grossest Street Fighter. It's the one that was the most cash register, that kind of bullshitted the fans the most, that you had to wait to get stuff that you thought should have been in there like day one. And I need to make this clear, like, because I've been playing Street Fighter 5 again lately, and I think it's like a really good, solid fighter. Like, I think it's weird. And it's, I've met friends through that game. I've fought Evo champions on that game. I fought WWE wrestlers on that game. Like, I've got a lot of great stories wound up in Street Fighter 5. But the problem is like, there's just so much negativity around that brand that it's not like they can just keep Street Fighter 5 going into the next generation like they're going to do with, say, Rainbow Six Siege, because there's already, at least in the mainstream, this idea of Street Fighter 5. This is the hard thing. It's like, no disrespect to Ono, because like, he did bring Street Fighter back. You know what I mean? He did bring it back. He did bring more people into the game. He did rejuvenate all of fighting games, not just Street Fighter. All of fighting games was because of his drive. But like, they were playing these. Apparently, the stories go that they've been playing his early ideas for Street Fighter 6, and people weren't really into it, and Capcom have told him to kind of step away from Street Fighter, and that was all rumor. But 1 week after the rumor, he announces he's leaving Capcom, and that's a bit snug. Do you know what I mean?
It's a little bit too on the nose for it to just still be a rumor that may or may not be true.
Right. The rumor is that he's kind of told they're taking the brand away from him, and 5 days later he leaves the company. You know?
Yeah.
But So, like, thanks and well played for everything that he's done. I think Street Fighter 4, and I'll lose my FGC card for this one, but I think Street Fighter 4. I think Street Fighter 4's. I keep up with the memes with the kids. I think Street Fighter 4 is one of the best fighting games of all time in terms of a complete package and the long nights and the long weekends and that. But Street Fighter 5 does have a lot of dirt around it. It's taken 3 years to get to the point where it's kind of a worthwhile package for someone to just pick up and immediately have so much to like dive into. And like, I do think it probably needs new people looking at it, as in the franchise. I think 6 needs to be kind of a clean slate, like a kind of a fresh start, a fresh look at looking how the game works, at how you launch the game, at how you approach marketing and esports with the game. And it's not disrespectful to say that Onno's done a great job, and maybe now like someone else needs to kind of come to it with fresh eyes and fresh ideas. And it's not even a knock at him, because Heresy, I feel the same way about Mortal Kombat. Like I don't think the people who are behind Mortal Kombat, who've been behind it since the beginning, I think maybe they should step away and somebody else should make Mortal Kombat. I think it's time for some of these franchises to be handed to younger people who grew up with them and have their own ideas, and their own ideas for design and their own ideas for mechanics. And it might not work. It might be terrible, but Street Fighter 4 was like a rebirth, and it might you bring in new people and you might get another rebirth. As for these new characters at season 5, I think I said it. Rose is my favorite Street Fighter character to play as, so I'm really glad she's coming in. But it's so anticlimactic when characters join a game when the game's got like a year of life left in it, because it's just like, well, I'm going to spend like 6 months learning this character, and then everyone's going to be like, oh, new game's on the horizon. So it's cool, more characters are coming, but I think it's a bit late. I think 5's already in the twilight years.
I think 6 is probably a 2022 release, so you'll have probably a good year with Rose before we start thinking about Street Fighter 6.
I can't. I'm too old to play Street Fighter now. That's why I play Mortal Kombat, because it's just fucking dial a combo. Do you know what I mean? I've been playing Street Fighter again recently. Fucking timing and frames, no thanks.
Yeah. You're talking about his career. He has had a very interesting career path. He started in music and sound design. He was a publicist on Dino Crisis 2. Who knew that would be a weird route to go before becoming a producer, and he did some character design. I will say it's a shame that he's leaving because of all that he did on Street Fighter 4, but also this probably means that Deep Down is permanently dead. Does anyone here remember the Deep Down?
I remember thinking it was going to be holy shit, I'm blanking out.
Dragon's Dogma 2?
Yeah, I remember thinking it was going to be Dragon's Dogma 2. And then it never happened.
That trailer, I watched it again this morning, came out in 2013. Been nothing ever since. They haven't even released or finished the engine that they were making that game on, the Phantom Ray engine, because everything they've made since that trailer shown off has either been MT Framework or the RE engine. So, that's to me is just like the biggest bummer is we'll never get Deep Down or Dragon's Dogma 2, whatever it was going to end up being. Yeah, that sucks.
He leaves a legacy. Whatever he goes on to next, he leaves an enormous legacy with Capcom, and the fighting, and he'll always be welcome around the fighting game community. And I'm sure he'll still turn up to like the pro shows and do his showrukens and probably take photos with his Blanka toy. But yeah, I'm glad for the clean slate. I really am. But if he's the reason Street Fighter 4 happened, then as much as he's frustrated me with some of his ideas, like he's all good in my book, because Street Fighter 4 was it was something else. It was a phenomenon.
It'll be interesting to see if he goes indie and develops his ideas that he was coming up for Street Fighter 6 as a solo project.
I wrote about the news this Sunday morning, and in the comments, people were like, "Oh, I'm waiting for the Kickstarter for like Boulevard Brawler." People are going up with it.
Our second story of the show has to do with Rocksteady Studios. It has been 5 years since Batman Arkham Knight was released, and there have been many rumors on what the studio was going to work on next. There have been plenty of teases and bullshit logo art for a Superman game over the years. But this week it was confirmed its next title is going to be Suicide Squad, or a Suicide Squad game. According to Jason Schreier, WB Montreal is actually working on a rumored Batman Gotham Knights game. And they were working on a Suicide Squad game before it was canceled and they moved on to their current project. Rocksteady's work on Suicide Squad allegedly started in 2016, and while it will be at DC Fandom later this month, which is something I'd never heard of before, but now is everywhere on my Twitter feed just because of everyone who's showing up to it, Schreier says we shouldn't expect it for a while. The Batman Gotham Knights game, whatever it ends up being called, is also going to be at DC Fandom. Also, it's rumored the Suicide Squad game will be a games as a service title. Dan, do you have any interest in a Suicide Squad games as a service?
Fuck no. That is like so low on my to play list and to be excited for list.
Now, what puts it so low for you? Is it the games as a service, or is it the Suicide Squad? And is the movie affecting your opinion of the Suicide Squad?
Absolutely. Like, I had no idea what the hell Suicide Squad even was before the movie was announced. And then I kept reading all these fucking stupid fucking articles of Jared Leto or whatever the fuck doing pranks and shit on set, dropping dead pigs and rats. He sounded like a fucking miserable person to be with during the entire filming of that movie. And then sure enough, the movie was what it was. So the mixture of all of that and then the movie itself being bad pretty much killed like all of my enthusiasm for the Joker as a character. And then combine that with like a service game. Man, I just wish that Superman game rumor was true now.
I hope that before every mission, as all your characters, all the Suicide Squad are putting on their equipment, the real Slim Shady starts playing. I feel that will really get me in the mood. It's not Suicide Squad without Slim Shady. I'm just saying.
I hope the Joker does sick pranks where he leaves just dead animals in your characters' lockers and stuff.
Yeah, that's not even the worst thing that he did. I think there was like
used condoms as well.
There we go. That's what I was gonna say. Yeah, that's what's gonna come with the deluxe edition of the game.
They're gonna bring Jared Leto back just for this. Hey, Jared Leto, we needed to get some used condoms going up here. We got some collector editions we got to ship out.
He's going to personally write "damaged" on the cover of every single game case.
And I'm sure there's Suicide Squad fans out there, but sorry, I'm genuinely sorry to those people.
I don't think I mind either that it's a Suicide Squad game or that it's a games as a service, but the promo art, if that's corrupt Superman or evil Superman or a bad Superman from another dimension, I am just so tired of that concept. Like, stop telling that story. It's no longer interesting.
I can't remember if it was you or maybe I say in the comments, but said it should be a Bizarro, which would be awesome. That would be very cool.
I think Chris actually wrote that in the story his write-up on it. But I saw that online as well. People are thinking because of like the veins that you could kind of see around his eyes, that it may not be Superman. But then I'm also thinking it could just be corrupt Superman. They'll do that. I need to see the gameplay first because I'm not against the games as a service title. But if it's as boring looking as Marvel's The Avengers,
I'm gonna throw up some defense here. Like, yeah, Rocksteady, well known for making those atrocious Arkham games.
That's true.
Right, we are talking about a developer that put out a series of games that were the best comic book games ever made, and those games are fucking great. So okay. I think to kind of already kind of pre-shit on this as the games of a service thing is a problem. We don't know that for sure, but like. They are the people who made like Arkham Asylum and Arkham City, and to a lesser extent Arkham Knight, which even in that kind of, like Arkham Knight's a few years old, but today is still one of the best looking games on the market. And it's like, I think I think we can be a little bit more optimistic that it might be a good game and might not be. I don't want to say the Avengers because I've not played the Avengers, but what I will say though, that's kind of defense. What I will say kind of concerns me are kind of two things. The first thing is if you're playing the Suicide Squad, that opens up gunplay. And one of the reasons the Arkham games are so good is because they're not cover-based shooters. But if you're like the Suicide Squad, then you're kind of opening the ball to have like machine guns and rocket launchers and gun mechanics, and which I'm not interested in. Like I
used condom mechanics.
Part of what makes those Asylum games good are the gadgets and the trickery and the way you have to use the environment. But if you can just be like Harley Quinn dual-wielding M16s, then yeah. And the other thing is the Suicide Squad themselves. I'll play a Batman, a Batwoman, or a Batgirl game till the fucking cows come home. Make 90 of them. But like, I don't give a shit about playing as Boomerang and Killer Croc.
You don't want to play as Captain Cold?
Well, this is what I mean. It's like those Arkham games are so good because you've got like Batman, who's fucking like kind of cool anyway, and you have like, you know, was it Kevin? I've forgotten his name. Kevin Conroy doing the voice, and who's fantastic, and he's against this kind of great rogues gallery of villains. And I don't deny that. I don't dispute that Rocksteady aren't going to make a solid, great-looking Suicide Squad video game. But even if the game like looks and plays amazing, I don't know if I want to put 30 hours bouncing between like characters like Deadshot and Killer. I just don't want to play as those characters. Don't get me wrong; it's not being made for me. There's plenty of people who might want to play as those characters, and that's absolutely fine. But my concern about Suicide Squad is that it's just, I don't know if they have the charisma to make this game an Arkham Asylum or an Arkham City.
The thing is, I think just it being a Suicide Squad game and the rumor that it's a games as a service game is already just a huge uphill battle in terms of opinions.
Yeah, but if there's any studio that has the pedigree to win that battle, like Chris said, it's probably Rocksteady, because he is right. They are one of the premier developers of the past 15 years, and certainly the creator of what is arguably the greatest superhero game ever.
I think, but like in agreement with kind of what Dan said, like to a lot of people, there are some great Suicide Squad stories out there, but the film isn't one of them, and kind of getting washing off the stench of the film, because people are gonna the majority of people are just gonna see that Suicide Squad game and be like, that's gonna be like a game like the movie, and I didn't like the movie, and you've got to kind of somehow like tell them, don't worry if you didn't like the movie, it's not going to be like that. But I don't know. It's more of an uphill battle than just saying we're making, fair play to them for doing something different. How easy would it have been to be like PS5 Arkham game, you're Batman again? It would have been so easy to do that. And fair play that they're actually looking at other characters. But like, there's a sequel coming up, and this game kind of has the Warner Brothers stench all over it of like, like how Mortal Kombat guest characters are always conveniently characters who have a movie coming out at the same time. Like Terminator and Joker both had films coming out when they turned up in the game. This also kind of reeks of, we're going to make another Arkham game. Well, actually, we've got this Suicide Squad 2 film on the horizon. So if you could just...
Is it 2? I thought it was just like a reboot again.
It's not a full reboot from what I understand. It's like a sequel and a reboot that just has the name Suicide Squad. So... I don't know what they're doing. Having seen what the DC Extended Universe has done over the past 6 years, they also don't know what they're doing. So it's James Gunn, though, so I have faith that it will at least be watchable.
There's something funny that, like, for a few years now, because Arkham Knight came out a while ago, for a few years now, people have been talking about what would be next. And people were like, oh, what if the next Rocksteady game is like Birds of Prey? Or what if the next Rocksteady game is like kind of Batman Beyond? And people have been coming up with all these different kind of ideas of the DC universe. But in that time, so many bad DC movies have come out that, like, if you said to me 5 years ago, or you said to the public 5 years ago, the next game's Birds of Prey, and you're going to be Huntress and Catwoman or whatever, and Harley Quinn's in the mix, people would be like, that sounds really fucking cool. But to the majority now, if you say the next game is Birds of Prey, they're like that fucking Harley Quinn movie. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, those films have gone a long way to kind of disassociating the mainstream, the majority, from these brands. So I think a lot of people see that game, see Suicide Squad, and immediately think, I hated that movie, even if it's got nothing to do with the movie.
Now, the real question that we all have to ask is, if this is a games as a service title, which character will PlayStation pay for to have be exclusive to their console?
Harley Quinn.
They did the Joker for the PlayStation 3 on like Arkham's thing or whatever. So I'm all bets down on the damaged Joker.
I was gonna say, yeah, probably Harley Quinn if they do any of them, or they could do El Diablo or Rick Flag. You know, those really name brand characters from the DC universe. Everyone knows so well. Who was that one that he climbed and that was his thing?
Oh shit, yeah.
He was like in the movie for 5 minutes and all he did was climb.
WCW's The Wall.
I was like, this set me off on the
Slipknots. That's right. His name was Slipknot.
That's a good name, damn. I want a main Slipknot.
I got no illusion that this isn't going to be like a great looking, mechanically sound, interesting, even like engaging kind of game. But like, I'm not interested in the games of a service thing if that turns out to be true, and I'm not interested in playing as the Suicide Squad. Like,
understandable.
I just play another Batman game. God bless him for trying something different, but I'll just have another Batman game, thanks.
Well, hopefully that WB Montreal game turns out to be as good as the Arkham titles. Sure. So we'll see, though.
Or they'll pull like a Metal Gear 2, and you play as like Deadshot for the first mission, and then Batman joins the Suicide Squad. He just plays Batman for the rest of the game.
We are just about out of time, but before we go, Occams, we have a community shout out this week.
Yeah, we've got two. We've got some birthday shout outs. Gadge Knight and Carrick52 celebrated a birthday. And I want to give a shout out to the Shoetoid hashtag that started up. Everybody's sharing some fly kicks. That was fun. I always appreciate that.
Awesome. I have to check that out. I haven't seen that yet. That is it for this episode of Podtoid. On behalf of Charlotte, Occams, Chris, Dan, and myself, thank you for listening. And don't forget to subscribe on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Podbean, or the Destructoid YouTube channel.